without a doubt. All right, well, I have 9 o'clock. You ready to get this show on the road?
Ready to go.
All right, let's get it going.
Oh, we're live? We're streaming right now? Cool. Awesome, man. Let me just
quotidien, si c'était
Pantheon Plus.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Pantheon Plus, episode 37. Jeez.
37. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, how
Where
did
did
that
the time
happen?
go?
I don't know. I don't even remember what we talked about last week, let alone. No, I'm kidding. No, it's been pretty crazy. So thank you guys for getting us to 37. It's going to be exciting when we get to 52.
Yeah, need to do something special.
Yeah. Kat, thank you for subscribing. 5 straight months. You're awesome. Thank you very much. Yeah, so welcome to Pantheon PlusYou. For those of you that might be new to the show or just kind of discovered Pantheon Plus, this is our original. This is our baby. This is my favorite of the shows we do. And it's a very heavy theory craft show that usually is going to take concepts of MMORPGs around Pantheon news and community discussions and kind of really dig in deeper on them and give our opinions on certain things in the genre. And more than anything, the show, it really thrives on not just listening to myself and my co-host, whoever that may be, Therek tonight, but it really revolves around filling up our green room with people who want to come on the air, like you're on a sports talk show, and voice your opinion on the topic. And you're allowed to talk about whatever you want. The show's completely open to any opinions. We ask that you be respectful so that we can actually have a conversation. But other than that, you never have to agree with us or anything. So jump in the green room in our Discord. If you haven't done it before, it's super easy. Do not panic. Everybody has to try it once to get used to it. But in our chat here, you're going to see a link to our Discord. So that's how you can get in there if you're not. And if you're already in there, jump in the green room, hang out, and we'll pull you in whenever we're going to take guests. Right now, it's wide open at the start of the show here. Usually we'll hopefully see it fill up a little bit. But tonight, we're going to talk about the video which highlighted perception storylines. Therek, I think it goes without saying that when we saw this video come out, it was a pretty big deal to me. I know Basgrim posted something along the lines of this is the most important video they've maybe ever put out.
He did, yeah.
Yeah. What are you? I mean, before we jump into this, we're going to get pretty deep into the video. We're going to talk about key parts of this video, but what? Kind of share with everybody what your first reaction was watching this and what you thought of the overall video.
Well, I mean, I said it before. I think I love that it was separated from the Twitch stream they did the day before because it gave us the sort of the chance to really look at the detail. I think that they did a good job of scripting an encounter, scripting a way of doing a storyline that showed off what they're trying to get at. I like that. I like how they progressed with it, and then they would reset and come back. I think they did a good job of showing how the flagging system works and how things are different based on different things you've done. I mean, visually, we could talk about how impressive it was and all the things that we saw, shadows and lighting and the detail. I liked the way they did it. It was very straightforward and very purposeful, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Didn't seem like they were trying to do something they weren't prepared for or something on the fly. It was very scripted, and I like that. I think that shows off their systems well. So, and it was it was more information that we got than we've had about the perception system so far. Right?
Yeah.
This was a lot of new information, a lot of first time we've seen this in action. We've seen some pieces in other streams, but nothing to this level.
Yeah, I
right?
totally agree with that. Yeah. And it's interesting because if you've seen the other videos, some of the stuff that maybe you had questions for in the past might have kind of started to make a little more sense. And I think that there's some people that maybe didn't see the videos in the past that don't understand some of this. And I'm hoping that we can clear up some stuff. So you guys all have one vote and you can vote. If you vote again, it'll take your vote away. So feel free to vote how you feel now. And if that changes during the course of the stream, or we're able to answer any concerns or maybe dig into something, you can change it. But on the side of the screen, you guys will see a vote. It's ! vote. No matter what you're voting for, you have to put ! vote, space. And then if you look beside each one of the ranks, you'll see how to vote. So the top one is vote in. The second one is vote veg. Third one, vote rewards, vote waste. And the last one, vote fence. And it kind of tells you right beside it what you're voting on. And our question's pretty simple tonight. Where do you stand on perception? And I'm interested by the end of the night to see where that is. So at any time, please feel free to vote on that. Now, tonight you brought up the graphics, and the graphics are phenomenal. And I'm sure that on the side, we're going to get into discussions around that. Okay. But I'm not focusing a ton on the graphics tonight. So, but again, Therek, if you have things you want to talk about, go for it. If you want to come in the green room or in chat, you want to talk about it or ask questions, please do. It doesn't mean just because I'm not focusing on graphics doesn't mean we can't talk about it, because the graphics here are pretty awesome as well, right? So the format I'm going to be going through this, I'm going to go to some parts of the video and I'm going to play some of the video and you guys will be able to hear it, okay? So I'm going to stop and play parts and then I'm going to talk about it. And Therek, you can feel free to tell me to play something or pause something to talk about it. So just jump in. It's going to be very free form, but we're going to dig into this and we will really keep an eye on chat tonight. So as we're talking about certain things, chime in. So before we even start, Schlocky here said his biggest concern with the perception system is the group aspect of it and how it can potentially ruin your set of flags. Like imagine one person killing a random hostile NPC, which was friendly to you, flagged you out of that cold quest line without consent. Murder hobos and such will be an issue for the system. We'll go into that a little bit more. I'm not sure that maybe that would matter.
Well, I think that they're gonna. I mean, I think that that's a sort of an obvious thing that they would address and they would plan for. I guess you would say. Yeah. But you never know. I mean, it's certainly a valid concern. It's not the first time I've heard that either. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Well, Vox, welcome. Ghostmine, welcome. Calbus Farside, welcome. Okay, so let's get into this. So I have it queued up here at 155 in the video. And what we're going to see, I'm just going to give a quick rundown. We're going to watch it for this part for a little over a minute. And this is kind of walking up to someone, and then we'll break this down, but I want to just play it and then give me your feedback there once I pause it. And then I'll kind of talk about what was important to me, and chat do the same. This is a very interactive show tonight. Even if you're not in the green room or we don't bring you live, the chat's going to be a big part of tonight. So here you go. If you guys have any issue hearing the audio, just let me know. But we're going to do little sections. We're not going to watch the whole video. That's not the point of this. It's more about the section. But here we go.
And just quickly, we want to point out that, as you draw near to this Spriggan, you don't actually, when you hover over her, we could attack her, but we don't really have any way to interact with her except that she's actually speaking to us as we draw near. So this is something that we've been able to get in recently, which is the chat bubble system for NPCs. It's not for everyone. It is an option. So if you would rather the NPC chat just go straight to your chat box and that only, that's fine. But we do.
I like looking at the screen at the play space, walking in and just seeing it on there instead of having down the main chat. Again, that's a personal preference, but I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It does a lot to kind of bring the world to life because you're able to not take your eyes off of the NPCs or off of the context of the situation, and you can read what they're saying. It's cool, and this is placeholder art, obviously, for the chat bubbles. Just something representative to make sure that things are working and feeling right. But so let's move on in a little bit further here.
Okay. So the first thing interesting there is, well, here, could you hear it, Therek? I know you can't hear it through me, but were you able to hear it on Twitch?
I can hear the audio from the video, but I mean, I know I've watched it like 3 or 4 times now. I think I know it by heart. So yeah, it's okay.
So in this, they show sort of how the perception system will start, right? Or just the general interaction with like these NPCs, right? We're not seeing an exclamation point above the head, right? We can't even interact with that one, right? But when we walk by it, we're greeted with like a speech bubble, which they said can be turned off. Now, I love it. And Ben actually makes the point there that he likes it because you don't need to leave your field of vision. You're playing the game. The speech bubble is right there. It keeps you on your character. That's a really important thing for me, even with the interface, right? Now, you can attack them. So everyone here is saying, it brought up the attack sign. Can you attack them? Yes. And Joppa makes I don't know that I'm going to show the video part. He makes a very small comment of, well, other than being able to attack them, you can't interact with them. So he does say that. So if you do see that sword, yes, you can. It's like EverQuest, right? Nearly everything is attackable. So,
yeah, that's right. And all the NPCs, the quest givers were killable, and a lot of times people did.
Yeah. So the other thing about this is that this part, again, you don't need to have the speech bubbles. You can just have it pop up in your chat. So if you're someone who's not really into it at all, you just throw it in your chat and kind of ignore it. And the speech bubbles that you see, what's that?
Yeah, like I would be the one who wanted it in my chat box, not
Really?
the speech bubble. Yeah, the speech bubble was one of the things. I'm glad that Joppa did say that it's like
Mhm.
placeholder, because I really didn't care for it all that much, to be honest. So I would put the dialogue in the chat box the same way it was in EverQuest.
I don't watch my chat box much. I get in trouble with that. Like when my guild's talking to me. I don't know, like, yeah, even my interface, like I move my icons up under my character's feet, and I typically have everything like right in the middle of the screen so I can really focus on my character. So the speech bubble thing, I like it. Now, again, you brought up a good point there. It's a placeholder art. So it might look better than that when it's implemented. They said that they kind of did it in a way that it was just to make sure the system worked, right? So that's important to know.
Yeah, that's true.
So anything else on that before I move to the next part?
No. I like that chat had a lot of the same points that we talked about. Somebody asked, I think Shadestomp asked if it was attackable. Somebody else had a good point before we move on, just looking at it from the other side of, can somebody ruin a storyline if they are killing something that you need faction with for your storyline? Somebody asked, I just want to scroll up to see if I can find it, but what if no, Ghostmind said,
Okay.
I'm on the other side of the question. If someone in my group is able to see something that I haven't, then will I be able to follow that same path of perception? Right? So it could be confusing if if somebody else can't see what you're interacting with, right?
That's a good question.
So interesting to how that works.
That's a very good question. Now, I'm just going to, I'm not going to play much longer here, but for about 10 seconds, just to show you guys what a perception ping looks like. You see it right there at the top.
Awesome.
Now we've seen that before. The perception ping was in the Amber Fate video. If you haven't seen the Amber Fate video, please go watch it. Watch the one with Ko. I'm not saying that the one with Sacred in them wasn't good, but it was slow paced and it was really freeform.
Yeah, they didn't focus as much on the perception stuff in that one,
and they didn't focus on. They were just playing. They weren't like, as a viewer, it wasn't tailored for a viewer. And that's not, I'm not knocking them for that, but it was watching people play more than it was like if a streamer would play and involve you, like, oh my gosh, look at that. Like it was more them talking about it, and it's good, but watch the one with Ko and you'll get a lot of explanation on some of the systems. So this ties into that. And that's being a keeper, right? Those things come up because you're a keeper, because you have perception. Now we're going to skip ahead here to about 4 minutes and 42 seconds. So let me skip up to that. And what we're going to see here is they discover one of the Spriggan behind a vine, right? The name of the Spriggan is Varan. And you get a bubble, right? But watch what happens here.
Anything out.
A human in Oldwood.
So I'm going to pause it. Now, this one wasn't attackable. So there's your difference, right? The other one was a standard Spriggan, and this is a named Spriggan. This one's not attackable for whatever reason. Now, the difference is they were also able to interact with them and talk. Now, if you're unfamiliar and you haven't watched a bunch of streams, this can be a little confusing. This box that you see on the screen, and you can actually see my pointer here, this box is a perception box. And this is important. You will not get this if you're not a keeper and your perception is not the proper level. So like this symbol down here is keeper. This is perception. The blue glow is perception. You're going to talk to a ton of people in Pantheon and you're just going to have a standard box, right? Like there's regular quests out there. They don't have anything to do with perception. And I think that's one thing to make very clear is that the quest system that's people are used to, like questing for items, questing for experience, that is a completely different system than perception.
That's a really good point. And that's something that didn't get mentioned actually in the stream. And I have it in my notes to mention it because if you're just learning about Pantheon now, and this is the first time you're seeing this, you might think this is the entirety of what questing, their questing picture is this. Mm-hmm. And like you said, there is more to it. Actually, in the developers roundtable that came out today too, they talk about this. They talk about tasks as actually a separate thing. So like there's these storylines, which are these huge perception-based things that we're going to see. And then there's tasks, which are more along the lines of like your standard quest that you would think. You know, you talk to an NPC, they ask you to do something, you do it, you get a reward, right? Yeah. So there is that. It's not on the same level, and they're not. I don't know. I mean, how much they're developing that in comparison to the perception system, but it is there, right?
Yeah. And the interesting thing, so we're going to get to a point of contention. Some of the contention, and perfectly fine, by the way. So the point of contention that we're going to get to here is how this system flushes out, and that's going to be. Bear with us as we go through some of this stuff at the beginning, and then we'll get into the green room, we'll get into your chat, but we're going to be building up to the biggest point of contention, and you're going to see a second of it here. So when this pops up and you talk to them, here's how a seasoned follower of Pantheon should feel. And I get if you just jump in on day one, you're not going to have this knowledge. But because we've followed this game a lot, we've seen the way that they've developed this interface that tells you its perception. When this comes up, if you're into perception, if you're a keeper, this tells you start paying attention, right? So one of the fears people have is like, it's too difficult to be able to search. Like, how do I know? I feel like I'm going to be looking and clicking on everything. That's true. You're probably going to be doing that. And Therek, do you agree with that? Like, if you decide to be a keeper, you're going to really be kind of looking around.
Yeah, but you're going to want to do, if you've gone down this path, you want to do that anyway. Because you're just interested in the environment and the world. So yes, to some extent.
And Thorndeep, thank you for answering EQ Serious questions. At any info on the release of the game. Pre-Alpha 5 will be out before the end of the summer. It is in theory, a lot of people believe it may be the last pre-alpha, which should speed up everything quite a bit, but we can't confirm that. It's really going to depend on how it goes. So remember, you're not going to see, to get to this point where you think to yourself, well, I'm going to miss things. How do I know what I'm looking for? You've decided to be a keeper. You've probably gone through some sort of, I don't want to call it a tutorial, but a lesson of some sort, I'd imagine. They're just going to be like, here you go.
Some sort.
Yeah, right. And then you're going to get these special pings, and we're going to get more into detail on that too. So in this point, you talk to them. Okay, I got a perception ping, and they say nothing, right? This pretty much says nothing.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's going to happen here, and I'm going to let this play through for a second. So watch this and listen. It's going to be about a minute, and then we'll jump back in.
It's unusual to see a human in the deeper parts of Oldwood. Your presence is welcome here, but do not be careless.
Very good. Cool. Yeah, so unlike the Wild Heart Spriggan we passed before, we see Valren, we run up to her. She has a chat bubble as well. Oh, it's a human. It's a human in Oldwood. And if you go up to her and hover over her, you actually see that you can talk to her. So that's what Ben did. And really just kind of a basic message. We're here in what seems to be Spriggan territory to a degree. And she's just observing the fact that you're here. There's nothing deeper, nothing special, just a quick little conversation. Now, here's what's really important to emphasize. The perception system is meant to condition you as a player over time to not just stop here. You could be tempted to just stop here. Oh, it's an NPC. Our first response is just run straight for an NPC when we see one. We interact with it. What happens, happens. What they say is what they say, and we just don't really expect anything more. The perception system, though, is meant to give you this sense that there's always a possibility that there could be something more to see, or something more to find, or maybe a way to push things to open up a little bit. So I want to ask you, Ben, to come back here with me. We're gonna back up and kind of reset this moment a little bit. And this time we've noticed Valren, but instead of just running right up to her, what's going to happen if we kind of take in the setting that she's in a little bit? We're paying attention to what's around her. And as you do that, as you kind of, look around, you'll find that if you hover over these vines,
I've got a hand on the flag.
You got a hand on the vine. Yeah, so go and interact with that.
Fresh nectar pods are growing on this ivy.
Now, if you go and talk to Valren now, let's see what happens.
There is even more to see here, human, and she said.
Okay, so let me pause it there. So in chat, please ask questions. Joppa, welcome, by the way. Please ask questions here, because I want to try to help. And we may not have all the answers, but we want to try to help. So there's a lot of people that saw this and said, well, how would I have known to click on that flower? Again, I'm gonna repeat a few things Joppa said that you really have to pay attention to if you want to be a keeper. You've chosen to be a keeper. What does that mean? It means I'm going to perceive the world. Let's keep that in mind. That's super important. If you're going to be a miner, you're going to be looking for mining nodes, right? It's if you're going to be a healer, you're going to be looking for health. Like whatever roles you pick in a game, you're going to amplify what you're trying to achieve in any way, whether it's your gear, whether it's your rotation. When you're a keeper, you have to perceive. And I've pointed this in Therek. We talked about this on the Rewind. If anyone's ever played a point and click adventure game or a game like Myst, perception. It's a very easy way to understand it. There's a lot of people who haven't, and I've talked to a lot of people in different Discords or in different chats and said, have you ever played any of the Sierra point and click games? Because they didn't tell you anything, right? You clicked on everything. Before you could click on everything, you had to type, look at floor. There's nothing on the floor. Look at desk. There's nothing on the desk. Smell desk. Desk smells funny, right? Like,
yeah. But and you know what you're doing there is more than just what you're actually doing. It's more than you're thinking about what's around you, right? Like you're thinking about your environment. And the more I see of this, the more I realize that the secondary effect, or maybe even the primary effect, is just getting people to slow down.
yes.
We're so fast. Like we go so fast in games these days. We don't stop to appreciate what's around us. And like you look at the detail in this world, and if you're a keeper, you enjoy detail. That's the whole name of the game. I'm not going to do crafting if I don't enjoy crafting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm glad that there is crafting, but somebody else will do it, and I'll just buy their goods. So if I'm a keeper, that means I enjoy doing this kind of stuff and looking for those details, looking for the beauty of the world around me, and slowing down and just taking it, not going at breakneck speed constantly. So I think that's the way it is.
It's an absolutely great point. And Neff said, I like that example, but I'm terrible at point and click games. So I really hope Pantheon will give us some sort of skills. There's more on that. Just keep watching. There's more details on that. So there's a couple things I want to point out here. I'm going to kind of read through my take of that. So Joppa explains that the perception system is meant to condition you over time. If you guys haven't noticed, watching this video has conditioned us. Right? Just watching this video.
Started.
Mm-hmm.
It's already started.
So the system's meant to condition you. So at the beginning of being a keeper, you may not be that good, but you may get a lot better as you continue on and you start to discover things. And that's fine. That's how it should be. That's how any skill should be. Now, he also says, and I don't want to get ahead of myself too much, but he says it's important to notate because there's a lot of people saying that they wouldn't know what to interact with, right? So we'll get to that more when we get to some of the more difficult interactions. Now, the other thing too is let's talk about this character. We know she's a perception entity. If she didn't have that, then we could assume it's a normal interaction. We probably wouldn't put our spider senses on, right? As much. So we've gotten a hint. We had it pop up. And we had it pop up earlier too, not just at her. So we had it pop up. We talked to her. We get the perception box. So we've gotten a lot of tells that something is up. And some people have said, well, I don't know if I'm just walking around with my mouse pointer hovering over things. You're still looking at it. Like don't take away what you're doing and replace it with the generic, this is bad. People, and you'll see me on my screen here, people are mad that they're going to be going like this, right? Like, oh, I can't find my flower. You guys can see it. Like, oh, these mushrooms don't count. Oh, this leaves don't. Guess what? When you're doing this with your mouse, you're using your eyes to look at it. So whether you're trying to find a pointer or not, you're still perceiving. So the whole thing of, well, I don't want to just walk around trying to put my mouse over everything. Wherever your mouse is where your eyes are. The mouse are just a representation of where you're pointing and what you're looking at. So it's the same thing. Like, don't get wrapped up in a pointer changing. Like, that's you looking and the pointer change, like, oh, I found something, right? So don't get too wrapped up in that. That's something I think we're a little too focused on. And then he says, take in the setting. That's what it's all about. Take in the setting, right? So I'm going to go to 7:10. Therek, anything else before we jump ahead?
No, go ahead. I think we made some good points there.
Okay. So 7:10, I'm going to play a short part of this and check it out.
Searching for something, I believe Vaymir is intended to guide you. Look up, Mikhail, and meet her gaze.
Very cool.
Vaymir is intended to guide me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I
So
see in
the
our chat.
very, very small part and why I wanted to show that is this, right? So think of this perception quest line is all one thing. You started with a ping, then you found a Spriggan and they didn't really want to talk to you yet, but you had a ping back here. Then you go out and you find these mushrooms. Now they're telling you, okay, this is what you look for. So you're starting to build the presence of this perception adventure here. And now they're telling you to look up and look around, and you have to find who you're looking for. So we've seen look around, look at vegetation, look up, take it in, right? That's all things that we've gathered, right? Let's metagame perception, right? Exactly, spacing. So they're telling us what to do here. And I can tell you, I don't know what perception is going to look like, but it seems like to me that it's important to understand where you're at in each step and what you're learning and building on it, like keeping mental notes of this is what they want. So they tell you to look up. Yep. Right. And then he has a conversation here, just understand what Spriggan are. And that's something that playing the game, we're going to get to know more. As you learn about Scar, if you're a Scar, as you learn about gnomes, you start to learn about their being. And that ties into the perception system. Here we can assume that we know a little bit about Spriggan, their nature. They're all about life. This is their area. Little things are important. So these types of things are going to be important. And when you see a mushroom and you're Spriggan are nearby and you're in perception, that's the type of stuff you're going to be looking for, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like you said too, you know some lore. We can assume that you know a little bit about the lore going into this. I mean, there's plenty of lore available before the game comes out that you have access to, and you can learn about. I mean, there's a whole thing about the Spriggan, and if you care to learn about it, and you plan on being a keeper, you probably will.
Yeah. So
if you put yourself in that mindset, now the thing here is he's playing a human, right? So he's a human in Fairthale, in Oldwood, which is part of Fairthale, interacting with a Spriggan. So thinking about it from those lines, right? That's like Joppa will talk about it later about the flagging, right? And your race and your class play into what this conversation is going to look like. So I think that's important to keep in mind that, having knowledge of sort of the background. So what's the relationship between elves and humans, right? What is the history there? How would a Spriggan interpret that, right? So some stuff to sort of add context to it, and will help you find those clicks. It'll help you look around. You might be more prone to click on something if you know some background information.
And I just saw someone trying to check out what the pull is. It's very easy. If you see the pull on screen there, the question is, where do you stand on perception? It's to the right of the screen. And if you see each explanation says, I'm in, can't wait. And then you'll see how to vote for it after. So exclamation point, vote, space, and then the word after it that you see there. Vote in, vote veg, vote rewards, vote waste, vote fence. And those are all things that I've heard. That's why they're there. That's what I've heard about the system. Skipping ahead, this is a part that I'm not going to get into a ton, but chat, if you want to get into it or if someone in the agreement wants to get into it, I think it's important to show because it's a neat part of the stream. I'm just going to show it very quickly, right? And that's this here.
So one of the things we wanted to show off in this video too is the freeform climbing. And on the last developer stream, we talked about how climbing is on, for everything right now. And so we have a chance to demonstrate that for everybody, which is really cool. Now this geometry is kind of interesting.
Okay, so I just wanted to take a quick second to show you guys climbing. And there's a few things that are important here. If you go back and watch the whole video and you watch more of the climbing, there's a couple things I just want to point out with this. As a side, it was pretty impressive in demo, in my opinion, like how you can climb everything. Like we saw the climbing in Amber Fate, and we're like, okay, it's cool, you can climb here. Okay, it's cool, you can climb here. And they kept saying you can climb everything, right? But at the time, I don't think we got it. This is insane.
Yeah, we didn't see it that much. Yeah, this is a much more clear demonstration of what they're talking about. And later on, you'll see it again when they climb a couple other things like a tree and some other stuff.
Yeah. So it's a whole different topic, climbing, but it's in this video. And I wanted to point out that like the evolution of where this is, there were people in the past who thought that climbing was a gimmick. This is not a gimmick. And think about like when WoW introduced flying and all the old zones, like, well, they weren't ready for flying and it was weird. Like, you're literally going to be able to climb everything. Like, that's a massive undertaking of how the game's going to be developed. And for anyone who kind of thought that maybe this was a gimmick, I don't think so. This is going to be a big deal. So I'll hold, saying 100% you need to change your tune if you don't agree with it, but keep an eye on it because it's pretty interesting. But the one thing I did want to say here is they're climbing around a lot. And Joppa said like, hey, there's going to be like an endurance system. You're going to have a skill to it. So like when you see them just climbing forever and Ben climbs all around it, and he's like, it's not going to be like that all the time. You're going to have to get your skill up. People are going to be better at others than others. And they mentioned in the roundtable that rogues are going to be better climbers. That's going to be an innate ability on there. By the way, great decision. Endurance is going to be a part of it. So there's going to be, it's not just going to climb everything and that's it. There's going to be a system to it, but you guys can see how cool it looks. Now, I'm going to skip ahead and we're going to get into some of the biggest pieces here. And guys, we're not going to go through the whole video. I'm skipping a pretty big chunk because we're just going to kind of talk about it and then we're going to skip. But these are important things I want you guys to really, a lot of you have already seen it, but I want you just to take it in slower, perceive it. What do you think of that, Therek?
I like it. Nicely
good, right?
done.
So we're going to jump to 1047. It's when they're done climbing and they get up to the spriggan that they noticed. So I want to kind of just start right there. And I want to do a small little section of this, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to do kind of a skip.
Very cool.
Skip style
All right,
through, but
so
watch
we've made
this.
it up to Vamir. Now when you approach, yeah, awesome. Go ahead and roll through it.
Mikhail, period. You sensed it when you first entered our grove, didn't you? Yet feelings are like the smoke of an incense. Beautiful.
Now, one of the things they never talk about here, and watch as we go through this, they do the same picks of options below. We don't know what would happen if you click on what I would see. Maybe we get more of a ping on what we're looking for. They don't click on that. So there's options, and that could have a different dialogue, right? So just keep that in mind, that they're hiding stuff from us, and that's on purpose.
We saw that in the other Fairthale stream too with Ko, and there was like 3 or 4 other options that he never chose. That I go back and I watch that one, and I'm like, oh, I want to know what happens if you click that, right? That branching sort of dialogue tree. Where does that take me? That might go in a totally different direction.
By the way, Joppa just made people so happy. Did you hear what he just said in chat there?
No.
As long as I'm here, Pantheon will never have flying mounts.
Yes.
Awesome. People love it.
Yeah, that's a crowd pleaser.
Joppa just dropping the big bombs there. Okay, so here let's take this in for about a minute. We're not going to watch this like all the way through. I'm going to skip ahead, but I just kind of want to talk about just the quick little thing here.
Real, but ever-changing shape. Nay, who was certain you would come, but uncertain of what you would see. Well, Varin led me up here, so I'm going to say Varin led me to you. So it seems that you are always on the path to find me, Mikhail. Human and Spriggan alike walk a path, that is certain. But is what we truly see along the path that shapes each of us. Now, Mikhail, what do you see?
Okay. All right, let's stop there. This is where we start to get into some points of contention on the forums, Discord, Reddit, types like that, for people who are just really uncertain about this. And guys, listen, it's okay to be uncertain. We don't know everything. And there are questions, right? So it's okay. But let's talk about what we can get around in those questions. And I think here, you can't take this bubble and say, well, I couldn't find the next things they wanted me to find because this is all they said. You've already gotten here. Don't forget the path that took you there, right? Don't forget the path, because the path everything is shaping up for what you should do. Is that fair? Right?
Yeah. The word path is key here, and I'll talk about that in a second too.
Yeah. So she says, again, you're seeing the perception dialogue, you're continuing. And right there, just as you said, the quote is, it is truly what we see on our path that shapes us. It's on the screen. It's a big hint. It's a big hint. Remember, we are conditioned. That was said by Joppa. This system is trying to condition us. So drop your barrier, buy in, be a keeper, be perceptive. So I'm not going to show this. Yeah, let me show. We'll show a little bit.
I see you, Vamir. Look beyond me to the fallen tree shard ahead. I think she's talking about this one here.
Mm-hmm.
Hollow, rotten, for some nothing more than a relic of forgotten time. Yet it now serves as a bridge to many of the creatures living here. Go to the fallen tree bridge, Mikhail, stand on top of it and open your eyes, then return and show me what you have seen. I shall.
Okay, very cool. So
I'm going to mute it for a second. So I muted that just so we can talk while they're kind of jumping around. So what they're going to do here is they're going to jump down, and this is what some people would call a failed attempt. I do not. We'll talk about that later. But this is the MMORPG player that we are conditioned to be doing a quest. I mean, that's the best way to put this.
Yeah.
This is the way that a conditioned person would do it. Go to the bridge and tell me what you see.
Yeah.
So what is
Go
it?
to the bridge. Yeah.
So here,
you're
this
right.
is
I mean,
important.
The conditioning is go to the bridge, talk to the NPC, see what they say. Right.
Just to
I'm going to play
to
what
really
they're
double down
saying
on the
here.
fact that climbing really
Okay.
is on for everything.
Look at that.
Just showing there's a few examples of it really is that simple. It's you can climb in Pantheon. Look, here's a tree. I kind of want to climb it. All right, I am going to do so.
How cool is that?
We'll I mean, there's so much we can devote to really talking through that when the time comes and all the implications of that. But climbing is truly on. Okay, so we've been led to this fallen tree shard. Now, she said.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it there because I'm not going to show every time they do this. I'm going to show you when they do it right and kind of talk about some stuff. So you said path, Therek, and I'm going to go back for a second and kind of show you guys. If you're told, hey, go on the path, right? Like that's what they tell you to do. You know, you see a path. Like you legit look at this. Like as they walk right here,
Really
I'm going to
is.
mute it. But like, okay, they're showing this, but look at that path that you have to go on to get there. It's a path. There's like bridges and there's undercarriages, and they talk about that later. So you have to put together. Being a keeper isn't a free gift. Being a keeper doesn't mean you have exclamation points above your head and map indicators. That's not what this game is, and that's not what an entire system is based on.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah, you know what you know what the funny thing is when I was watching this and I was sort of reading and thinking about, you know, what they were doing, and then that part you're showing right there where, you know, maybe, or it might be in a bit, but Joppa's basically trying to give Ben hints of what to do. He's sort of like, you know, what do you see? You know, what are you watching? And right as he's saying that, one of the things I noticed, and now this was incorrect, completely incorrect, but this is the kind of keeper thinking I think we need to engage with or embrace, is right as he was saying that, that verdant proudhorn, the stag, was walking right in front of them, right? So my thinking was, you have to follow the stag, the path of the stag, because I was thinking, oh, okay, that must be the path that she would talk. So I was all excited. I was like, oh, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna follow the
That's a good point.
stag, and that didn't end up being what it was. But the point is that it's, you know, and I'm not trying to like, hey, look at me, I'm so great, sort of thing. Like, it's about paying attention and thinking about, you know, looking for those details and trying to interpret those details. So, you know, I just thought that was interesting. That stag was super cool too, and I pointed it out when we first saw it the day, you know, the first stream. But
Yeah.
I'm glad that it sort of timed up that way because it was kind of a cool interaction.
Yeah. So going through real quickly, they do this 3 times. I'm going to show the 3rd time. I'm not going to show 1 and 2. It's the same thing. So the first time they go through, they do exactly what the quest says. Hey, go stand on that log and look around. Stand on the log, look around, go back. You know, you don't get it. That's basically what happened. Like you don't get it. And that's it. Because you didn't fulfill all the different things that they were telling you. Look around, be perceptive, follow the path, taught you about life, right?
Yeah.
Now, the second time they go through, they point at the tree, the one that he actually, Joppa climbed on to show that he could climb. The root was part of it. And then from there, Joppa like really giving hints, like, and I'm sure Ben knew, but giving Ben hints, he's like, you know, you just looked at that root. That's like an old root, right? Like, what about that tree? That's a young sapling. Like, that's kind of the evolution of life. So he clicks on that. So they've hit 2 things they're supposed to hit. And then they go back and there's a little bit more dialogue. And there's some extra options, but they don't do both of them. So maybe one of the options keeps you in the game. Maybe it doesn't. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. And the 3rd time, they go in and they do some different things. And let me skip ahead to that. The final walkthrough is at 20:03. So let's go back because that's about 7 minutes of stuff we can skip. Let's go to 20:03. And this is where they go through the actual correct walkthrough. So I just kind of want to show you this and I want to talk to some of the points here. So I'm going to play this. Oh, I haven't muted.
Okay, cleared.
Let's go ahead and re-engage her.
Red lead.
Picking the same options once again.
Here.
Remember, we haven't seen the other options.
All right. And then we're jumping down. Blah.
So this time we're going to notice the route like we did last time, which you can actually do it on this route. We just climb down. There's several routes in here that you can get that Yep.
That is a super important thing. Now look at what came up on the screen as he walked around there. No, I've not seen anybody talk about this. Do you guys see that? A massive root. We didn't see that when we went to the other one, but he looked around right underneath where she was and you got a perception ping. So now you know this is one that you got to hit. You may not get that for everything, but here's the thing. It's find and check a root. There's roots everywhere. So it's not about picking in a specific root. It's about inspecting these old roots. The tree that you're going to is the dead tree. It's rot, but it still has a place. This root is one step before that. The small plant is the first step, and we're going to see another one too. But it's really important to note here because there's been some stuff here when we get to the mushrooms where people have said, well, how did I know to click on that mushroom? I don't think that's what was shown here, because if we can click on the root over there and we can click on this root, I think we could probably click on any of the patches of mushrooms we got to. And I know some of you are going to say, well, the cursor didn't come up, but he kind of just goes over it randomly. So we'll talk about that in a second.
Prompt on.
Here's the heart. Yep.
Watch out for the proud horn there. There's lots of little pockets of Spriggan that are easy to miss in here too. There's actually a couple in this tree right here to the right.
So look at that. If you're a keeper, are you just going to miss that? You know, Ben was just playing the role here, guys. And I think that has to be said. Ben was just like, okay, let's go. He wasn't playing the role of a keeper like we would. And I think that most people who pick a keeper probably will.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. They blend so well with it.
And you can see, I don't know if you're talking about the Spriggan that's in that little alcove there in the hollowed out tree, right? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And did you notice there's a bunch of mushrooms in there?
I did. And did you notice there's actually quite a few Spriggan in other places throughout the video too? I don't know if they didn't get pointed out, but I saw at least a couple more in a couple other places as I watched this a few times.
Right. So we see the mushrooms we see, but that Spriggan is probably a pretty big call out to go over there, check it out. And hey, there's mushrooms everywhere. So everyone who was concerned, like, why did you click on this specific mushroom? I don't think you did, guys, because you didn't have to click on the root they clicked on. You could click on any of the roots around there. And Joppa makes a very specific point to say that. They also click on a different tree this time around. So you can click on the different small trees, being born trees. They're everywhere. Look around you.
In this forest, in the middle of the night.
No, but the bioluminescence and the
that'll give them away.
The magical energy would be really, really cool. Now, what else might we see here? I mean, obviously there's lots of beautiful plant life. Some of these things, you know, could end up being harvestable or whatnot, but is there anything else that stands out to you?
Oh. What about these mushrooms over here?
Hey, there you go.
Oh yeah, look at that. Flavorful mushrooms commonly found growing on the trees of Oldwood.
Okay, so great point here, and I was actually ready for this, and I'm happy they showed it. Shadestomp said he mouses over a lot of shrooms. Only one set seemed to have a clicky. Yes. Therek, your thoughts on that before I get into detail? Anything there that you would say, is that true? What do you think there?
Well, you know, I don't know. The ones that you do end up clicking on are certainly like prominent, right? I would say that they stand out quite a bit. But there could be certainly lots of other ones that might look the same to some people, but aren't clickable, I guess. So I can see that as being a thing. But, you know, I don't know. Those ones kind of stand out for me.
So this is a good point for people who are kind of like concerned. I feel like, here we go. Joppa said, important point here. In setting up this demo for the video, we only hooked up a few of these mushrooms. The intent, the type of mushroom is what you're meant to be fine. They will all be interactable. Okay, Joppa, you are my hero. Thank you for clearing that up on here. You just made it a lot easier to talk to my points. Thank you, sir. That's exactly what I had written here. I said mushrooms. Another point of contention was he highlighted the others and it didn't matter. However, the biggest one he saw clicked on. It was also in touching range. So like when I looked at it, I'm like, well, maybe that's just the one you can touch, right? Like the other ones are up pretty high. But that is huge to know. And I think that Joppa, thank you so much for clarifying that. I really do appreciate you being here and checking this out tonight. That's a huge, I hope that alleviates a lot of concern for people, that it wasn't just that mushroom. It was mushrooms. It was roots. It was a new tree. They're everywhere. So, yeah.
That takes away a little bit of the pixel hunt concern, right? Like people in that saying that kind of thing.
And don't
Those,
get me wrong,
mushrooms-
I'll pixel hunt, and I'm not going to be
Yeah.
upset about it.
No,
not-
I mean, it's a valid concern if somebody's, if it's because sometimes pixel hunts can be way too small. Like literally you're looking for one pixel on a massive screen. I get that concern for sure, but certainly not, when they stand out like these mushrooms, which are actually called golden crown fungal pods, when they stand out like this, you notice them, and it should be not that bad.
I love that you know lore so well. And guys, if you're sitting there like, how did he know what these are called? Because there's lore videos.
Oh, I can go on. I can go on. There's more if you really want to know. There's
so
imperial orchids.
Bronson jokingly said, I love this stuff, but I have one question. Can I get high enough level to come back and kill all these Spriggan and use their bones for kindling? And Joppa says, yes. So interesting stuff there. That's sort of the biggest points. And Joppa, thank you again. That's awesome for everybody here. So there's one more part I want to get here and just talk about some stuff that I'm not going to show in video. Then we're going to go to one last-ish video part, and then we'll start breaking it down, and we'll get into the green room. I see that we have Nefel, Stands in Fire, and Hoye. Stands in Fire is in there first, so we'll grab you, then we'll grab Nefel, then we'll grab Hoye. And if you guys want to jump in the green room to come and chat, please do. So here's a few things that I want to talk about. The perception system is based on a matrix of flagging. So this is a point that Joppa made. Race, class, things you do, things you notice, items you have equipped, things you've interacted with, enemies you've killed could be a part of it. This means that revisiting is also important. And that actually adds more replayability. That's what I view out of that. Now, the spectrum of outcomes, which was a quote, if you want to be a keeper, you should understand that. Sorry, geez. But that's part of being a keeper. Like I said, it's just like anything else in the game. It's just new. So we're not accustomed to thinking this way. But it says here, the perception system, this is sort of a quote. I kind of paraphrase these. The perception system is designed from the ground up to be a vehicle of immersion, was the quote. The next one was the primary way to engage the world, storytelling, setting, meaning behind all things Pantheon. You are a product of your choices. Super important. And yeah.
No, go ahead.
No. So my last point is that it's important to note that he says that there is a way to also re-engage Vamir. And in future, he says this directly. This is important because I think some people were worried about this, and it's easy to skip over some of this stuff or just miss this part. But he says, in the future, insight and investigate skills are going to be a part in helping, right? So for people who are like, how am I going to find that mushroom? Well, if your investigate skills are higher or your insight is higher, then it may point you to it. You may get more pings as you walk by it to look. So now you're kind of at least know in the area, and that's going to evolve as you evolve. So sure, you might miss some quests early on, or you might miss some storyline early on, but you may have a way to re-engage it, and that's important to understand. It will bring you back to explore the world. Go ahead. What were you going to say there?
Well, just on that, I mean, they mentioned this in the developers roundtable as well. They said, the storylines are a good example of why you would come back to a zone later in your character's life. So like 10, 15 levels later, you've acquired new flags over the course of those levels, right? You've killed things, you've equipped new items, you have things that you maybe didn't have when you first experienced this area. So to come back and see how things have changed and see what maybe new perception pings you get, maybe how things, the dialogue might be different based on the things you've done in that time is really cool. And gives you a good reason to come back to some of these zones later on in the game. The other thing I'll say is I so love games that give you different ways of interacting based on different scenarios, different things you've accomplished. So I'm thinking of like RPGs where you have a different member in your party. So you won't get a dialogue if a certain member isn't in your party. Like things like Dragon Age did this, Baldur's Gate did this a lot. So things play out differently based on who's in your party. So all these flagging matrix that they talk about, I absolutely love it. And I'm a big explorer of dialogues and different outcomes and different endings, that kind of thing. So I think this is cool. And I think that we see this video is taking place in Oldwood, and this is just a small, area, not a small area, but a small example of how this system could function beyond just this one area. Like there might be something here that connects to something in a zone in the other continent, right? Over on Kingsreach or that kind of thing. So I like that there's this interconnectedness between different things in the world, and it changes what you experience. So I really like that.
So this is the last part of the video. I'm going to show them. What I'll do is I'll just run the video without volume in the background so you guys can just kind of see it as we're talking. And if anybody wants me to go back to a certain point or show something, just ask. This last part here is near the end of the video, and it's Ben asking a really important question. Now, if there was going to be any point of contention that I would agree with, I think it's going to be here. So let's jump in, and we're going to go to 2643. So let me jump to that real quick. So 2643. And Ben asks a pretty important question here that Joppa jumps into. So let's listen to this, and I'm curious what the chat thinks of this. So here we go.
Your decision making. What were you going to say, Ben?
Well, that begs the question then, being a metagamer myself, can I ever get backed into a corner where I make the wrong choice and miss out on like a great reward?
So that's probably the question. And I think the best thing to say there is that the perception system is designed to where there really is no best decision or worst decision or right or wrong decision. And part of how we're achieving that is that we are removing perception from this leveling or reward based paradigm that you would think of with, I guess, traditional questing, where maybe the only way I can get this item is if I do this quest, but if I quote unquote make the wrong choice or mess it up, then I've missed that chance. That's not going to be the case with perception. Perception is similar to the crafting sphere. You're not a crafter unless you choose to be. You opt into that system. With perception, you choose to become a keeper, and you do so because you value and you have a deep interest in the happenings of the world and what's going on in the world. And as a keeper, you will have an identity by the time you reach, kind of the full progression of that system, based on what you've done and who you have been. Who have you developed relationships with? Who have you developed faction ties with? This quest very much for the Spriggan could be, part of a faction kind of situation with them where, this could have been one avenue through which you go deeper with the Spriggan, but there will be many. And it's really meant, players will become, I think, comfortable with the fact that I am really becoming a product of the decisions I'm making. It's not gating me out of progression. It's not gating me out of content or, like adventuring content and making it to where I can never get this item or get this ability. It's simply a way for you to leave your impact on the world by the decisions that you make and the things that you are able to learn and to grow in, and really the vehicles through which you can do that.
Okay, a lot to take in there. So Ben asks a question, what if I make the wrong choice and I don't get a reward? So this is a big point for me. And Joppa brings up the point of comparing this to like crafting. Well, if I'm a crafter and I put a ton of time into crafting, I may not have a certain quest that I can do that other people can't do, but I can make something. And crafting is often compared to this a lot. It's like, well, if you're a crafter, you do this. And if you're a keeper, you do that. And they loosely talk right now about the fact that it's not going to gate you, which is fine. Totally okay with that. But that it's not going to be a rewarding thing like items or EXP. And I can get some of that. But I do have a very big question, Therek, on, well, there's got to be more reward than just being part of the world. Status, faction,
so
cosmetic items. So what's your thought on that?
So yeah, I have somewhat of the same concern. Now I'll say, first of all, I'm glad that it's disconnected from direct experience, gain and like item rewards from a traditional questing sort of structure and approach. But it goes to what I think Ben is saying here, or maybe later on. He says, I'm not thinking about the metagame. I'm starting to think about who I am, who I am in this world. And that's the reward that this should have, is identity. But see, identity is it's not just your identity, who you are, like the story you've built for yourself by the choices you've made. Your identity is also determined by how others see you, and what you value, what value you can provide to others. And I mean, that sounds like, sounds like sort of a bad thing to say, like I'm determined by how others perceive me. But the reality is, being a keeper should offer something. It should offer something of social value. And this is going from, Nefel had a great post. So when he comes on, maybe we'll talk about it, but about the social value of being a keeper. And I really think that that's what this is about. I think there needs to be connection and interplay and integration with the world that offers something beyond just, maybe, I get what you're saying, like cosmetic maybe, or something, a title of some sort, which are great. Okay. But I think it needs to go beyond that. So I don't know. I do have the same concern.
Yeah, and it's just, if we're going to relate it to being like a crafter, where you don't have to be a crafter, but if you are, here's what you can do. And I've heard that a lot. I've heard it from us. I've heard it from the community. I've heard it from Joppa, right? So let's align it that way. Let's make it so you can do special things. There's no harm in that. Don't make people be keepers, but make it so they have to find a keeper. That's okay.
Right.
If I want to have a sword made, I have to find a weaponsmith. And I'm okay with that. I'm not gated by that. I just have to engage with the community. Having the keeper be a part of the community that helps you with these things is super cool to me. And I think that with all the effort and how cool this system is, there will be a lot of lore fans that do this, and I'll do it. It's really neat. But I do think that there should be more than just status. It should be a status in the gameplay, not just a status in the world. Now, before we start opening it up, we're going to open it up to the green room here, and then we're going to we'll talk to anybody, and we'll go with some stuff here. But the big thing I want to throw out a Brad quote, and I'm going to twist it a little bit here. But how much does this play into making a world, not a game? And let's not forget that, Pantheon started with Brad's vision, and that VR is carrying on that vision. And this, to me, brings this world alive more than any MMORPG I've ever played. Again, point and click adventure, Myst, those types of games, you had to pay attention to stuff, and I think that that's a really, really important piece here. And the last part of this is surprise. Joppa, and this is kind of paraphrasing Joppa, but he talks to the surprise of perception and what it can bring forward in something like if you read a book and you had an oh my gosh moment. You're walking along, boom, some kind of crazy perception being like, what? And then it takes you down this path. It's just a surprise. He even related to like, someone in a book dying, and you're like, what? Didn't see that coming. That as a perception piece, you might go down this path and be like, holy cow. And think about like in your guild, if you're like one of the keepers, and not many people do it, and you're all sitting around camping something, like, did you guys know this? What do you mean? And you just start storytelling, like, because you were a keeper, and they're like, holy cow, I didn't know that. And that's a really cool part of being a keeper. But I still think there has to be, if you're leveling it from X to X, there should be something in there that you're getting out of that, not just the skill. But that's my opinion.
Yeah. The one thing they have talked about, or the one thing that did get mentioned, was how it is connected to factions, right? There was some discussion of how your keeper actions are really strongly connected to the factions that in your faction building or degrading, as it were, in the game. And I think, how that's linked to rewards or things could still connect it. I just think that we need to know more about that.
I have the video muted right now and it's playing. We're going to jump into the green room and let people come on and talk. So here's some questions and concerns that have come up. 1, should it have rewards? Obviously, I believe it should. And if so, what type? Number 2, what % of people will do perception if there isn't a tangible reward, but just a feeling of reward? It's a good question. 3, is this system a waste of time? That's been said a lot. No, I do not think it is. there are enough people that are going to do this. And here's what I'd say. A lot of the people that think it might be a waste of time or it's a waste of development time, one, you're not understanding the world, not a game thing. Number two, people have been asking for non-combat gameplay. I mean, what more could you want? So that's a confusing point to me. Before we open, Therek, what other questions do you have? Just like if you threw out questions or concerns, what would some be?
Well, let me think about it for a second. I'm just looking at my notes here. I don't know. I think I've said it sort of just how it's linked maybe to factions and the rewards that those can provide. So that's my number one question, I guess. You know, I don't know. I think you had some good ones there. Those are mine as well, I think.
Okay. So let's go ahead and jump into the green room. Thank you guys for waiting. We've done quite a bit of talking, but we do have a lot of time left for green room. So first we're going to start with Stands and Fire. Then we're going to go with Hoye, and then Nefel's in there. Nefel is ready to go. Like he's like, you guys are talking about what I want to talk about. So it should be pretty good. So let's bring Stands and Fire in first, and we'll be bringing you in now. Stands and Fire, how are you doing, sir?
Oh, not too bad, other than the fact that I think Therek has kind of nabbed almost all of the same things I was thinking about.
Sorry, man.
You got to watch him, man. He knows a lot of stuff. He knows a lot.
No,
So I mean, well, give us the key points.
It was great because a lot of those were, clearly I'm not the only crazy person thinking these things. So
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, kind of a plus. I'm the kind of person who is probably going to already be looking into the nooks and crannies of everything in the game world. Minus I played, point and click games until my eyes bled. So right there with you in the, crazy puzzles from, the early Sierra games all the way through the LucasArts stuff. And don't get me started about, Grim Fandango.
Oh yeah.
Secret of the Island.
Oh yes.
I know.
Yeah, all the first 3 Monkey Island games were amazing.
I know.
Yeah. But I think what actually has me interested looking at the way they're doing the perception system is that the fashion and form in which communication is presented to the players, whether it be traditional questing or in this case, kind of an offshoot that they're doing here, really kind of has a two-way impact. It impacts the way that the players are going to be interacting with the system, but it also is going to impact the way, like they're saying, they want players to start thinking about the game. You have older games which are very traditional information presentation. Click open dialogue with NPC gives you dialogue and you go forward. It's a very static, predictable, interactive system. A lot of older games did it because it was kind of what was there. A lot of games still do it. You have games that have more flashy sound and visual focused interactions when the world is trying to tell you something. Final Fantasy XIV's quest and interactive dialogues, where you're whisked into a cutscene with sound effects and flashing lights. It fits the aesthetic of the game and the way that players interact with that world. Here, you're being given interactions, which is slow down, poke at things, really read into what the NPCs in the world are telling you. I think it says something about the presentation of the world they're looking to put forth, that this is the fashion that they are choosing to impart this interaction with. So I'm all in for it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Therek, anything on that?
Those are great points. All I can think of while you're saying that is that subtlety is a brave choice, and it's a lot of Pantheon systems are, in my mind, brave choices. They're trying to do things differently than what we know currently. Some are throwbacks, but some are evolutions, and this is one of them. This is a different way of doing something that maybe some of us can have some history with, like you're saying with the point and click adventures, but it's not the same, and it's an evolution. And I think that's just a great point of how subtlety can be impressive like that, and can be something new and exciting.
And when you find those pings, like you're gonna get that sense of, oh, look at this, right? Like in this, if you were in here, you know, obviously Ben and Joppa know what's going on, but if they had grabbed like Basgrim to do this video, and Basgrim's never seen any of it, and he's searching, he's gonna look around a lot more. Like he's gonna be like, what's this? What's that? Right? Like one of us gets in that world, we're looking at everything for everyone who's watching. Like, oh, look at this, look at that, look at this. And this was obviously scripted to kind of explain the thought process, and it made sense. It taught us something. Don't overlook things. It taught us a lot of different things. But man, how many times, if you're a keeper, are you going to be like, like, like these moments?
Those light bulb moments are. I'm looking forward to every single one of those.
Yep.
And a lot of times, what people have said is like, you know, well, they'll just be spoilers online. But if you're a keeper, you're not looking those up. You don't want those. Why would you look something up that you're not interested in?
It's not meta.
It's a totally valid thing that eventually these things are going to be out there. We live in the age of the internet, but you choose whether or not you interact with that content online.
Sure. I still
and when it
play
comes to
old
story
point-and-click adventures, and I don't look
I
up
love them too.
walkthroughs. They're out there, but I don't look them up because that's the whole point.
And this is story based. Who reads spoilers for stories, movies, books?
Right.
Like if you play Legend of Zelda on, you know, the Switch, you're not reading ahead to figure out the story. There's a very big difference between reading guides to like min-max and see, this is where the reward system becomes tough, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's
because
exactly right.
because then when it does become min-max, you're going to have more likely to people to read, but it's not a bad thing either, because the keepers are going to figure this stuff out. The original keepers of the world are going to be the ones to search and figure it out and be like, oh, look at what we did. And the keepers of Pantheon are going to become known on the internet. Sure, there might be a guide, but what keeper figured that out? Like who's the one that's going to get credit? There's a lot to it that reading online is not really as big of a deal as it's made out to be, because there's still fun in exploring it, and there's fun in experiencing it. If you go and if someone does go read online and it takes them down this big rabbit hole quest and there's this great story, it's not going to be about the fact that they read online how to trigger it or get to it, but they're going to remember the story. And that's the same result. You know, maybe they didn't do the searching and the grinding for it, but they're getting the same end result. And I think that that's different than, you know, cheating your way through certain things and reading ahead. I don't think that's a big problem as much as people do. So.
No, agreed.
Well, Stands and Fire, thank you for hanging out in the green room and getting us started today. Great points. I'm sorry that Therek stole all your stuff. He's just too smart. I have to make things up and tell him that I found it. And he's like, really? And no, it's not real. But I just wanted
Next
to try
time
to test
we'll
it.
talk ahead of time.
Yeah, it was good that I'm not the only one thinking on this wavelength. So thanks, guys.
Yeah, you found a brother.
And listen, if you're thinking on Therek's wavelength instead of mine, you're already ahead in the world. So let's be honest.
Please don't tell my wife that.
Stands and Fire, thank you, buddy. Take care. All right, so Hoye's next. Let's bring Hoye in and see what he thinks. Hoye, sir, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How about you guys?
Good, man. Miss you, buddy. How are things? What? I didn't get to talk to you at all about this video, really. What'd you think of the whole thing?
Good, man. I liked it. There's a lot in here, and also the dev roundtable. There was a lot in there too.
There's a ton in there.
Still there? Did we miss you?
Yeah, you there?
Yep.
Oh, sorry.
We got you. Yep.
Yeah, it's I like it, man. I really do. There's a lot to say.
Well, so what's your thoughts on the whole system, Hoye? Like, are you in on the perception system? Did you have concerns? Like, what's your thought on? Is this going to be? You're a tank, man. I know you like to be in dungeons. I know you like to do all kinds of really cool things. So, like, what's this mean for you, for the dungeon runner? You're like me. You're a lot more like me. What does this mean for you?
Honestly, this is probably going to mean a lot for me when I make an alt.
Okay.
So I'm going to be honest. Launch day comes and I'm going to be heading to max level. You know, I'm not going to be like rushing through everything, but that's going to be my focus, is to getting to end game. obviously I'm still going to play the world and explore it, but when I make an alt, I'm really going to try to deep dive into the keeper system and just take my sweet time being level 5 for 5 years, or whatever. Just
Yeah.
because I feel like the perception system, I feel like it brings a lot of replayability. You can really just take your time really nice and slow and just dive into everything that there is. And it'll be nice when, like I said, my first tune, I'm probably not going to get too big into it, but it'll be nice when somebody in my group can, like you were saying, just sitting around, hey man, do you know that this place is, controlled by this guy, whatever, stuff like that. I think there's going to be a lot of that.
Yep. Yep.
Like with Hoya, what you said there, with your main character, you want to get to max level quickly. The thing that is good about the perception system in my mind is that because it's disconnected from experience, is that you're not forced to do this as a means to get to that, right? To take that approach to the game.
Yeah.
Because that's the problem, is that if you got tons of experience from doing this kind of a storyline, people like yourself who want to main a character and get to the max level quickly are going to feel like, well, this is the most efficient way to do it, so I got to rush through this, right? And then it's all wasted. Right.
And I hated that. I hate being forced to quest. I hate it so much. EQ2 was pretty good about you got most of your XP from dungeon grinding and whatnot. WoW was, you had to hit every quest hub on the way. There was, people have leveling guides with the exact quest to get, which ones to ignore, and you had to do it that way. And I hate that. So I do appreciate that they're not forcing me into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we just had a huge point put in chat. Very, very big point. And Joppa, again, really appreciate you breaking this down for people. I think you're really helping people overcome some of their concerns, just being able to experience a pretty short video about it. Joppa just said, and if you guys didn't see this yet, the depth of the flagging matrix will help with spoilers. The threads that develop Keeper A's experiences and outcomes will be different than Keeper B's because they're different characters doing different things in different places at different times, accumulating very different flags along the way.
See, that's huge for replayability too.
Yeah.
Huge. Yeah.
Huge. Yeah. So, Therek, I will be relying on you to tell me the things I need to know about being an elf, because it's not going to happen.
Well, you're still welcome in Oldwood, despite all the things you've said and the things you've done. I will get you passage into Oldwood so that you can do this quest together with me.
That's awesome. So anything else for you?
I would like to see it have some type of rewards. Like Therek said, I don't want it to be experience, because then that's going to turn into that's the way I got to go. I don't want to do that. But I would like rewards that are not experience or gear. Maybe maybe little trinkets, but I'd prefer something like kind of raid access stuff, to where you need somebody in your guild or raid force that has made friends with this big guy that will let you into this land to go kill a dragon or something. That would be cool. Kind of like a key quest or an access quest, or like just little things like you get more coin whenever you sell stuff to this guy because you made friends with him. Something like that. I'd like to have different little rewards that are definitely worthwhile, but it doesn't kill me. If you get more gold, I can just go farm more.
Yeah.
The access thing that. Go ahead. Man, sorry.
No, go ahead. The access thing you're saying.
The access thing was my idea too. I had the same thought, Hoye. If you think back to Amberfade when they were adventuring around and they had those pings coming up. Now, what if that secret wall that he ended up running through at the end and the box that was locked, Ko's character, what if that was a keeper thing, right? What if that wasn't accessible if he wasn't a keeper? I'm sort of thinking along the same lines as you in terms of what a keeper can offer to the world.
Yeah, and it'd be cool to have things like just in dungeons where if you're a keeper and you've done whatever you need to do, you can bypass, 20, 30 minutes of grinding just, regular mobs, and you can take a shortcut to get to a named mob sooner, just little things like that.
Exactly.
That's huge. And let's think about that too, right? So one of the concerns is that not everybody's going to want to be a keeper. So what can you, I hate using the term gate, but I guess that's what we would say. You can gate certain small things or maybe easier ways to do things, shortcuts, raid entry. So let's stop and think about that for a second before anybody gets upset about gating. It's one of those words in MMORPGs that's like the forbidden words, and I don't know why, but if you have 6-man groups for dungeons, you're saying, will 1/6 of the player base play a keeper? And that's debatable, right? So if I'm doing a dungeon and is there a good chance one of my 6 players will be a keeper? I'm okay with that. That's less than 20% of the player base.
Yeah.
So like if you have that buddy in your guild and you're like, okay, well, who's being keepers? Like, can you come? And it doesn't have to be everything, but like, what if it's just, like shortcuts? Maybe if you have a keeper, you can get through like some kind of wall puzzle and you get through it. And now the rogue that's there can, use his rope to help everybody get past something. Cause now it's not just the keeper, it's someone else in the group that's able to use their utility. Things like that would be super, super cool. And then when you talk about it from a raid perspective, like you have, like how big are the raids going to be? 40, they said? I don't understand because it's not a combination.
It was like
30?
4.5 groups or something like that.
Yeah, so 30. I think it was 30.
30 and then 33 or something.
Yeah, it was something weird where it's not even a 6, which I don't know. But then you're saying, okay, we only need 1 keeper out of that whole raid group, and that's not a whole lot to ask.
I mean, you'd be almost guaranteed you'd have one.
Yeah.
And also, that really helps one guy out, because what if one guy really just sucks at raiding, but he really wants to do it? Well, he can go build up his keeper system. Then now he's like golden. He's got to go stick it in.
Why is Therek here? He's our keeper. Oh, never mind. Sorry, Therek.
Only way I'm getting into a raid. This is the only way. I'm like the key master.
Who brought a ranger?
Yeah, right. That's right. Well, he's our keeper, ain't guys. I'm sorry.
I just think that with such a cool system, that I just think there should be incentives. It's very cool. It's a lot of work put in. And I think that when you put this much work into a system, especially with this matrix, that's going to make it so crazy and different. And there's different ways to get to different things. I just think that it's really cool to be part of the world where it's the point where it's like being able to tell stories and be an actual keeper in the world. That's really cool. I'm not knocking that. I'm not saying that that's not great. Okay. I'm not doing that. But what I'm saying is make it bigger. It's such a cool thing. It can make your games. This game can stand out when we talk about media, when we talk about reviewers, we talk about streamers. This is something to really make Pantheon different. So if it's going to be there and this can be a standout thing for Pantheon, don't hide it away too much. That's all. Don't hide it away.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that means. Again, it doesn't mean it gives me J boots, right? It doesn't mean it gives me Yakisha. It doesn't mean I get a fungi tunic from none of that. But something where when you're in town, this whole game is about like status, right? If I'm standing in town and I'm a keeper and someone walks by me, just like we saw Eridune with the flaming sword, just like we saw Landman armor, I want to see a keeper who's really done a great job. And I want to be like, oh man, look at that guy.
Yeah.
I think that's
got to mean something. It's got to mean something.
Yep. Anything else, Oye?
No, that's pretty much it for me.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks for stopping in. I appreciate it, buddy.
Appreciate it.
All right. And we're going to go to the last person in our green room tonight, which is Nefel. And he's had a lot of discussion. We actually covered his post on the Rewind, right, about this. So I'm really excited to bring Nefel in. So here we go, Nefel. If you want to unmute your microphone, we'll be bringing you in as soon as I see that drop. So I know you're ready to go. And hopefully that will be soon. Unmute your microphone. Do it, Nefel. Tell him in chat.
Waited all this time.
There it is. I got it. He's there. It always happens. You tell someone you're bringing him in, and they're like running to the bathroom. Nefel, what is going on? How are you?
Hey. I'm doing all right. You guys.
I'm doing good, man. I'm really excited about this, and really excited Joppa came in and really answered some really important questions that I think will help the community. So I'm feeling good right now, but I don't know if you know this, on our Rewind last week, we went in depth on your post. And it really, honestly, Therek, I think, specifically spent a lot of time reading through the comments and sort of the theory behind it. But why don't we let you talk now? We've talked enough. What are your thoughts on this whole system, and what are your concerns? What do you like? Where are you at on
Cool. Well, I actually hadn't had a chance to watch the rewind yet, and I'm flattered that you guys talked about my post.
I'm
But,
flattered that you said yet instead of I never watched the rewind. So, oh well, no kidding.
yeah, no, some days are good, some days are bad. Actually, you lucked out today, or maybe I lucked out that I happened to see your ping in Discord right as I started making dinner, so I was able to jump in. But yeah, as far as perception goes, I mean, I think the video did a really great job of showing off like the mechanics of the perception system and how it, how it works at a functional level in game. And I think that's really important for us all to understand. We need to understand, how am I going to interact with this system? And that's what the video tried to do. The part that was missing for me, and you guys have already talked about a lot, is, well, okay, great, but what does that mean for the rest of the world? Like, is it just some solo activity that I'm going to go do because I happen to enjoy lore, or is there something more to it? I'm of the opinion that you can't put something into an MMO like Pantheon and not have it have some kind of impact on the world and on other players. So, in the poll I voted for rewards, and I'm not talking about like I don't want rewards for me. But I want some value to the system. I want people to say, "Hey, is there a keeper around? We need a keeper for something."
Yeah.
Whether that's like triggering buffs, like what diplomats did in Vanguard, or maybe it's starting zone events, or maybe it's even just helping people puzzle out the quest lines that they're on. I don't know, but there needs to be some value to it. The same way that crafters have value to other players because crafters make items, keepers should have value to other players because
keepers have
they
knowledge.
do something. Yeah.
Here's an interesting thought. Somebody brought up Final Fantasy 14, but my mind went to Final Fantasy 11. Having a thief in your party helped people possibly have better chances at loot. What if a keeper, because of their knowledge, could help loot chances for the whole group? What if a keeper's presence could just make a group a little bit more knowledgeable, a little bit stronger? Maybe a really strong keeper could lure out some of those rare mobs, maybe a tiny bit more. Just things like that, I think, could be really impactful. Thoughts on that?
Yeah,
Go ahead,
Derek.
No, I was just going to say it's about class interdependence, right? Like one of the through lines in Pantheon is class interdependence. And I know a keeper's not a class, but it functions along the same lines as what you've got sort of, if you think of three spheres of crafting, adventuring, and perception, right? And like you mentioned, the Vanguard, the diplomacy system, thinking along those lines, there's definitely like that Venn diagram of overlap. And where is that overlap, right?
Yeah, I think we have to be really careful what we ask for, because the challenge is that if you make that impact too powerful, now every group is required to have a keeper in it. Which we don't want people to feel like they're required to go be a keeper or to have a keeper every time they go into a dungeon. So I think we have to be careful with exactly what it is that keepers can do in the world. But they should be able to do something. My preference would be that whatever it is that keepers do is something that nobody else can do, that it's different from what everybody else does. And that way you don't have to worry about, sorry, we were going to take, we can't take you on our group tonight because we want to keep her for the experience bonus. You don't run into that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me stop you there for a minute. Let me stop you there.
You have to be careful.
So I understand the theory of that. I think it's great theory. I don't think there's anything wrong with the theory. And I think that a lot of people, because of the modern MMORPG, are very afraid of being siloed or being left out more than anything. Not being included, I don't think is the problem. It's who gets left out because of it. I think it's more of a left out than an inclusion. So we talked about, like, you kind of said, like, well, you don't want to have to go in a dungeon. Like, well, we need that spot for a keeper. But we do need that spot for a tank. We do need that spot for a healer. We do need that spot for DPS, and we probably would prefer a spot for CC. I mean, we're already doing that. Is adding the keeper role really going to change much?
Well, let me answer your question with a question.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you need that spot for a craft?
For a crafter?
Yeah.
What if
So, you know,
that's a good question.
yeah.
What if we're going into a spot where the anvil is and the whole reason for your night is to get that crafter there? So there's a lot of reasons that you could have a group composition to get the crafter to a special crafting location or to harvest mats for a crafter who may be the only person able to harvest it in a certain area. So you could technically make a night of camping to appease a crafter for sure.
Okay, well, let's.
But it's not all the time. It's
think about-
I get what you're saying.
Think about why would you? So you're not a crafter. You're an adventurer.
Mhm.
Why would you care about helping that crafter get to the anvil? What's in it for you?
Having a tie with a crafter who can make you something in the future. That's how I think. How am I going to save money?
Right. Right. So that crafter is, by you helping that crafter now, that crafter can help you out later because they can make you items. So now let's substitute keeper for crafter there, right? The keeper says, hey guys, I need help. I need to get into the dragon's lair to follow up on the storyline I'm working on. Obviously, you're nice guys. You're probably going to help him out anyway, but what's in it for you? If you take that keeper and you help him complete his storyline, what does that do for you? I think that's the question we're trying to answer.
Yeah.
And, I don't think it's as simple as, well, maybe we get some extra loot. It should be something that is unique and special about the fact that you took a keeper to finish their storyline that benefits everybody. But what is
about
that
this?
thing? I don't know.
I may have just had a great idea. What if it's not loot and it's a large faction boost? So think about like warlocks in WoW for people who played it. You could go to certain areas and summon a monster that you guys could all fight to kill for the warlock to like get a spell or something like that, right? There were a few different things they did for that. What if, so you brought up the example of a dragon's lair. I'm a keeper. We're going to this dragon place. We fight all these things, but this keeper can get us in this room and there's a special enemy we fight. We're not going to get loot from it. But if we kill this enemy to help the keeper's storyline, everybody who's in there that kills that enemy is going to get a really big faction boost. How's that?
Yeah, there you go. That could work. I'll give you another example. Since you brought up Final Fantasy XI, in Final Fantasy XI, if you were fishing, you would occasionally fish up monsters, and they would actually be really strong. So a lot of times in high-level areas, people would stand next to the fisher, waiting for the fisher to fish up the monster so that they could fight the monster. It was actually kind of funny to watch when it happened. But so think about maybe keepers can actually trigger events or set things in motion that wouldn't normally happen in the zone if they weren't there.
What if you got a ton of keepers together and they could bring forth a world event?
That would be awesome.
And those are both good ideas. And even to go back to what we were saying earlier, and it's not about like skipping content, but just maybe there's another path that if you have a keeper in your group, that path becomes available to get to where you want to go, like the anvil, for example, in Amber Fate there. What if there was a path that a keeper had access to that maybe, not easier, but just saved a little bit of time or did something beneficial for the group from a, risk reward standpoint. So something like that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, here's something a little more subtle, and then I'll stop brainstorming. But well, I'll try to stop. But we've talked about dispositions before, and how there's potentially a lot of different dispositions that mobs can have, and they may not always be obvious, or that you may not always know what they mean, even if you know that they have a certain disposition. Well, what if keepers, through the storylines and what they do as keepers, can identify those dispositions and help your group understand how to counter them properly? So maybe part of being a keeper is that you're learning that knowledge along the way to say, oh, wait, guys, that orc over there is going to run for help as soon as we engage. We better snare him or something to keep him from running off. Yeah. And that's a really it's probably an overly simple example, but think about it in that terms. If the keeper is learning more about the world, how does that knowledge help the rest of their group or their guild?
Yeah,
and that provides. And here's the thing: so it's everything that you learn should be something, right? If I'm a tank and my defense ends up, then I can take a bigger hit. If I'm a healer and my spell casting's better, I heal for more. If I'm a keeper, what am I learning? What is a keeper getting? Knowledge. Okay. How can we use knowledge in the world? That's a great example that you just brought up. What does knowledge do? Like you walk by a wall, there's some runes on the wall. Nobody can read it. You can. What does that mean when you read it? If it's faction based, if it's a Spriggan, you're in a Spriggan dungeon. You're walking by, there's a Spriggan off to the side, just standing there. He doesn't really talk to anybody. But when you talk to him, he opens up a door for you because he's like, oh, it's you.
Right.
And it takes you down a different path. It makes sense. I'm not saying like create something that doesn't make sense and just give it to them because it's work. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you are harvesting something, it should mean something. A keeper's harvesting knowledge. What can I do with that knowledge? You can't just give me knowledge and say that I can talk to Therek in Discord and tell him a story. That's fine. And there's people that are like that. But how do I spend my knowledge in game?
Yeah. It's like a currency, right? It's like like it's something you've worked hard to gather, and now you want to make use of it somehow. Just to go to look at chat for a second, Stands and Fire said, haven't they touched on the keeper disposition connection in the past? I thought so too. I can't remember exactly when, or if I can't pinpoint what they said about it.
I thought it was insight. Maybe not.
I think so. Something along those lines. I do think that is something they've touched on. So
yeah, I know it's something that the community has talked about. It's going back a year or so, but we talked about it a lot on the forums about, well, what if keepers, what if keepers basically could figure out like the lore skills and figure out, what the weaknesses of different monsters and dispositions were, and we had a lot of discussions on the forums about that. I want to leave you guys with one more example / story that you'll probably both laugh at. Way back in the 90s, I actually wrote for a MUD. So I wrote zones. And in text MUDs, you would have a lot of those interactions that Minus actually described earlier, where like you look at the wall or you look at the plant in the room, or all these little things that you could inspect. And we had the ability to add descriptive text to each of those things. So if you typed "look at the wall," then the MUD would pop some text back up at you. And there could be anything from just it's just a wall like any other, to oh, you notice some scribbling on the wall, or whatever, and you could get really in depth with it if you as the zone designer wanted to. So in one of the zones that I created, I decided to have a hidden treasure room, and what I did was I scattered clues as to how to get into that treasure room around the rest of the zone, attached to different things. So you might walk into a part of the zone and see that there's faded lettering on the wall, and then if you look at the wall, it gives you part of the riddle. And then a few other places in the zone, different ways you pick up other parts of the riddle. And then once you've done all that, if you put all of that together and then you solve the riddle, now you can get into the treasure room and get the treasure that was there. So that's another kind of thing that they could potentially do with keepers is, and for people that love questing like me, that would be really awesome. But the idea that we're going around and picking up and piecing together all of these clues, and then it leads us to something really cool. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that sounds like such a natural way of doing this, right? Like it sounds very much like what you would think when somebody just described this to you off the street. They would say, "Oh, isn't that sort of what the idea is? Is some sort of epic, sort of grand quest line that leads you to something?" So good points.
Yeah, and the thing that I'll say here is, Slate Next said, then you're just kind of back to needing them in every dungeon. That word's dangerous. Needing. Okay, so if I'm in a dungeon and I'm in a courtyard and there's a secret passage to the right, and I can skip maybe a courtyard, maybe a long hallway, and I skip. Let's go crazy. This is over. Like I skip like 10 pulls. Okay, and it gets me further in. Having the keeper would be nice. It's nice to have. Hey, is there a keeper on? Hey, you want to come with us tonight? You can't. Okay, I don't need the keeper. If my group's good, we'll kill through those mobs. We'll fight our way through that hallway and we'll get to where we need to be. Careful with those types of words. And I talk about this a lot on all the different like things we talk about on our shows and stuff. Like using definite words like now you need a keeper. No. Maybe that top 1% says to save 5, 10, 20 minutes, we need a keeper. Okay. Everybody else isn't going to do that. So don't think like the 5%. I've been in the 5%. I get it. I understand it. Totally do. And I've done things as the 5%. But you don't need it. Quality of life is not a need. Quality of life is nice to have. Would it be nice to have a keeper? Yes. Is there a problem with saying it would be nice to have a keeper tonight? There's no problem with that. Needing a keeper is saying, hey guys, we can't get into this dungeon without a keeper. That's needing a keeper. Skipping a hallway or a path or getting into a different area quicker and making a different route, that's not. And if you're hiding enemies that you spawn as a keeper, and you can only get those as a keeper, well then if they only do a big perception hit or it's a big story arc or it's a really cool event, just something fun to do or a faction event, that's not needed either. So it's just a matter of trying to figure out how to place them without, like, the night's ruined if we don't have a keeper versus it'd be nice to have a keeper. And I think if you're at a point where it's like, it'd be nice to have a keeper, that's fine.
Yeah, I agree. There's a balance for anything like this, right? It's just like, if you forget about keepers and anything else for a minute, but like, you don't want to create a bunch of encounters where you absolutely have to have a rogue in your party or you're going to fail, because that's no fun, right? If you've got a rogue, that's great, but if you don't have a rogue, you can't do that fight, and that's no fun for anybody. So the same should apply to any sort of tie-in that keepers have with adventuring or even crafters have with adventuring. It should always be like a nice to have, but not so important that it truly is a requirement. I do want to I'm going to disagree with you slightly about the 5% thing.
Yeah.
Even though you're technically correct that, like, players don't need to do these things, we have all seen examples of the meta taking hold in these games and people just blindly following the meta even though they don't need to. And so, somebody else said we have to have a keeper, so we have to have a keeper. So I think it's actually really important to try not to let that perception take hold as much as is possible. That doesn't mean that you completely nerf any aspect of the game into the ground, but at the same time, it's probably good not to let things become so powerful that people start to believe that they're required, even if they're really not. I hope that makes sense.
It's a good point.
That makes sense to me.
Therek, what's the number one thing we talk about in every rewind? What's the number one
meta
thing?
always comes up.
Okay. And so I've this is a big topic for me. I'm going to be sarcastic here, but this is not being sarcastic to be a jerk. It's actually, this should be legit. Okay. I have a bottle of water in front of me. Okay. If I try to drink it like this, it's not very good. I have a cap on. I can poke a hole in the bottom and I can drink it like this. But then if I don't drink it all, I'm going to spill it everywhere. If I open it and I drink it, that's meta. It's the best way to drink this bottle of water. I know that sounds really silly, but what I'm saying is that the term meta is assigned to MMORPGs a lot. Meta is a term that means the best way to do something, the perceived best way to do something. There is no way to stop meta. There's no way. There just isn't. There's always going to be a best, and it's exactly stands in fire, most effective tactic available. You could have the most balanced game on the earth. And if there is this much better of a reason to have a paladin than a warrior, which, by the way, we want class identity, so that should happen, there's going to be a meta. It's another word. Meta is another word that's often looked at in MMORPGs as a bad thing, because meta creates evil people who use it to hurt other people. And that still comes to that pug lifestyle. And we're talking about community, we're talking about guilds. Those things fade away if you're in the right community, if you're in the right guilds. And it's not that easy. It's not easy to just say be in the right guild. That's a cop out. But what I'm saying is no matter what we do, there's going to be a meta. So you have an option of design everything so hardcore that you're trying to avoid this meta that you're not going to be able to avoid. And then instead make the difference between meta and what's next not so bad. Make it balanced. There's still going to be a meta. And we know there's going to be better fights for a warrior. There's going to be better fights for a paladin. There's going to be better fights for a dire lord. And we all want that. We want there to be different reasons to bring different tanks in different scenarios, and that's meta. We know that healers are going to heal different. You're going to have a cleric that's a brute force healer. You're going to have a dot healer. You're going to have kind of a hybrid healer, AoE healer. DPS is going to be different. Let's be completely honest with ourselves. In fight design, you're always going to have something where it's better to be a ranged than a melee. If something cleaves or it moves around a lot, being a melee sucks. If you can stand back and just cast spells at it, in that fight, you're better. If the fight's a ton of movement for everybody and that caster is constantly moving, can't stop to cast, well, now it's better to be melee. Meta, I get it. I understand. I totally understand why people dislike meta, but we have to be careful because it's unavoidable. So if it's unavoidable, how much time do we spend on it? And what's most important about meta? Is it the gap between meta and in what's not meta? Or is it finding a way to make playing together easier with the people that you should play with? And I don't know the answer. And I know I ranted, so I apologize. It's one of those things that I hear, and you know, Therek, you're laughing every time. Every time meta comes up, I just start ranting.
We know it's your trigger word.
No, my trigger word's white knight. Call me a white knight.
Oh, that's another one.
That's a bad one.
Yeah, that's
a bad one.
I think it's a good point, though. I mean, you're right. You can't avoid it. I think the trick is to try to find, and I keep saying the word balance. I probably overuse that word. But there's a balance between really having there be a best way to do things, 90% of the time versus a best way to do things in certain situations. And I think the situational version is what we all want to see out of Pantheon, right? It's not that there's one formula for playing the entire game, but instead, well, it depends on who you have in your party and what you're fighting. And, anytime we can say it depends, that's a win. And I think that's hopefully what the folks at VR are really trying to get to in their content design. I don't know if you guys got to listen to the dev stream or the dev roundtable, but there was a lot of really great stuff about content design in there.
There was a ton in there. That was one of the best, probably the best DRT that I've listened to, at least.
Neff's just saying that because he was mentioned in it.
He was mentioned. So are you, though. So,
I'm just kidding.
You should listen to it.
I listened to it. I did. No, Neff, awesome stuff, man. And please don't take my rant as a negative. It's not at you. It's just,
I knew it was going to trigger you. I said it on purpose.
Just bring him on to trigger you.
Yeah. Anything else, Neff, before we close up the show for the night?
No, I think you guys are good. Thanks for having me on. And I'll talk to you.
Yep. Thanks for being a part, and thanks for your posts on the forums too, man. Really good stuff there. And so everybody, great chat tonight. Last time to vote if you can. You guys can see on the right side of the screen, it says, where do you stand on Pantheon? Above each one of the bars, it says, I'm in, can't wait. And then in parentheses, vote in. The one below it, vote vague, vote rewards, vote waste, vote fence. I'll give you guys a couple more minutes and we'll look at that. We've had like 40 plus people on most of the night. We only have 23 votes. Please vote if you're here. Let us know what you think. But I think no matter what happens here, it sounds like a lot of this community is in. We have 15 votes, 16 votes now for I'm in, can't wait. It looks like tonight, maybe we got rid of some of the vague concerns. Like there were so many concerns about which mushroom you had to click on, and Joppa hopefully solved that worry for everybody that all the mushrooms would be clickable at that point. So hopefully the vague side of it is a little bit better. I think that it looks like being on the fence of whether you're going to do it or not, that's not a bad thing because this isn't for everybody. So that's actually, I don't consider that super bad. And then it looks like we do have some people that kind of would want a reward for it, but I'm really happy to see that nobody here, and I know that our community is a really awesome community. We're very thoughtful. We have a lot of conversation. I think that's really awesome about this community. So I'm not surprised to see people aren't saying it's a waste of development time. We've seen that on forums and we've seen it on some of the other Discords, but not here. So I'm really happy to see that you guys don't think that, because this is straight out of what Brad wanted. And if you've been following this game for a long time and you say this is a waste of development, then you wouldn't have followed it in the first place. You're just saying that, my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's one of those systems. It's going to take time. We've seen a small example of it. When we see it in the big context of the bigger world and we're all able to sort of get our hands and our brains wrapped around it, I really think that it's going to be a signature system in Pantheon. And I love that. So yeah.
And Schlocky did say, because we didn't call it out, but I did read it and I forgot to call it out. Schlocky just wanted to remind us that Joppa did say that the hover icon, the hand, will be based within distance. So you can't just like highlight something and be like, what is that? And go look for it. You do have to actually kind of search and look around, which is kind of neat.
Yeah.
And the last thing I'll say is we are so conditioned. We're conditioned to hate the word meta. We're conditioned to hate group finder or group building or searching for a group, right? We're just conditioned to hate it. There's a lot of things that we've been conditioned to think. And when something new comes, we start to try to silo it into like the things we don't like or maybe the things we do like. And perception's different, guys. This is different. The only thing I can relate it to is point and click adventure games and Myst, stuff like that. And Myst didn't tell you anything. Like play Myst, it's like,
yeah, you better
walk.
be up for a few hours.
Yeah, just walk around.
Time on your hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So taking ideas like that and bringing, making a world feel alive and exploration.
Keep an open mind, right? And just keep an open mind. Like that's my sort of approach to things. And I don't make judgment until I've had a full experience with it. And right now, nobody has had that full experience except for VR, right? So keep an open mind. We'll see where it lands.
Awesome. Well, Therek, thank you, buddy. Always awesome having you on here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I love this show. I love talking. When you announced this show, I was very excited. So thanks for having me on as always. And anytime, dude. Yeah,
and it's been a really stressful week for me. And Therek knows he's talked to me. And this show, just all that stuff, just washed over. Talking about Pantheon, talking to you guys in the community. Joppa, thank you for coming in, and the other people in VR who made a comment. Community matters, guys, and that's what this show's about. That's why Pantheon Plus exists. So. Yeah, next week we will not have any shows. Work training. I'm driving 3 hours away. So there's nothing I can do. We're not going to have a Rankum. We're not going to have a Pantheon Plus. We're not going to have a Rewind. We might have a Rewind if I can. It's probably not. Just assume no.
But I'll drop a little thing for our wonderful community here that there will be a lore video that I'm done. I'm just holding it. So we have something for next week. So if you've been following my lore videos with the classes, you're gonna see Shaman, Druid, and the Summoner next week.
3 worst classes. I like how you put those ones together. Okay, so everybody Shaman's super cool. All right, guys, have a wonderful night. Therek, thank you. Thank you to chat. You guys are awesome. We'll see you on the Rewind this Sunday, and then we'll see a lore video next week. So awesome stuff, guys. Thank you all very, very much. It was an awesome show tonight. It was really fun, and thank you, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Pantheon.